For David, stepping into management meant stepping directly into the space occupied by those who despised him. He knew Richard and Claire would not give up their sense of superiority easily. The real test lay ahead, not just to succeed in his new role, but to redefine what dignity and leadership meant in a place that had long thrived on elitism and exclusion. And as the agency buzzed with mixed emotions that evening, David walked home with Angela by his side. The city lights shimmered above them, and though the road ahead promised challenges, he carried a quiet assurance within him. This was not just his story, it was theirs. It was a testament to patience, courage, and the truth that no amount of scorn could silence a voice rooted in dignity. The announcement of David's promotion did not silence the whispers. It amplified them. Within days, the office air grew thick with tension. Some employees congratulated him sincerely, others with stiff smiles, while a few simply avoided him altogether. But no reaction was as sharp as that of Richard and Claire. The couple, once smug in their superiority, now seethed at the idea of answering to the very man they had mocked. They cloaked their resentment in professionalism, but their disdain leaked out in subtle acts, ignoring his emails, arriving late to his meetings, questioning his decisions in public forums. David noticed it all. He could have retaliated. He had the authority now, but he chose restraint. His leadership was built not on domination, but on quiet firmness. He stayed late to refine strategies, listened carefully to his team, and reminded himself that his worth was not defined by their acceptance. Yet, even as he led with dignity, the constant undercurrent of disrespect gnawed at him. He knew he could not allow Richard and Claire's behavior to fester. To do so would undermine not just his role, but the integrity of the agency itself. One afternoon, Jonathan called David into his office. "I know what you're facing," the CEO said. "This agency has prided itself on results, but for too long it has tolerated arrogance. You don't need to prove yourself to me, David. You already have. But if you want to last here, you'll need to confront it, not just endure it." Jonathan's words settled heavily on David. He had spent his life avoiding unnecessary conflict, choosing patience over pride. But now, his silence would not just protect himself, it would set the tone for others. The opportunity came sooner than expected. During a high-stakes presentation for a new client, Richard openly challenged David's proposal, sneering that his blue-collar perspective was too simplistic for a sophisticated brand. The room froze. For a moment, old habits urged David to stay quiet, to let the insult roll past him. But this time he rose slowly, his voice calm yet firm. "You call my perspective simplistic," David said, locking eyes with Richard. "But simplicity is not weakness, it's clarity. Real people, the ones who buy our products, don't live in boardrooms. They live in neighborhoods like mine. They budget every dollar, they hope for better days, and they look for honesty in the brands they trust. If that truth is too simple for you, then perhaps the problem is not with my perspective, but with your inability to see beyond your own reflection." The silence that followed was heavy, unbroken. Even Claire, usually quick to back Richard, sat stiffly, unable to find words. Jonathan leaned forward and nodded, signaling his support. The client smiled faintly, impressed not only by the content of David's response, but by the conviction behind it. In that moment, the tide shifted. Richard's arrogance, once a weapon, now exposed his own fragility. In the weeks that followed, David continued to prove himself, not through grand gestures, but through steady leadership. He encouraged collaboration, recognized overlooked talent, and created an environment where ideas could flow without fear of ridicule. Slowly, some employees who had been indifferent or even skeptical began to respect him. They saw that his strength lay not in titles but in integrity. But Richard and Claire did not soften. Their bitterness only deepened. They began spreading rumors, suggesting David was favored only because of Jonathan's guilt or a need for diversity optics. They underestimated him once again, believing he would ignore their whispers. Instead, David decided to confront them directly, not with anger, but with undeniable truth. He invited them into his office late one evening. The air was tense as they sat across from him, arms folded, faces hard. David began quietly, his tone even. "You've made it clear you don't respect me. That's your choice. But what you fail to understand is that this isn't about me. It's about what we represent. Every time you mock me, every time you dismiss my ideas, you're not just insulting me. You're insulting the very people we claim to serve. You're telling them their voices don't matter. And that," he paused, his gaze unwavering, "is why you will fail. Not because of me, but because you've blinded yourselves with pride." For once, Richard had no clever retort. Claire looked down, her composure cracking. They left the office without a word. It was not a dramatic victory, but it was a turning point. Their power lay in belittling him publicly. When stripped of that, their cruelty lost its edge. Months passed, and under David's guidance, the agency thrived. New clients came aboard, drawn to the authenticity of campaigns that resonated with ordinary people. Jonathan often remarked that the agency had finally rediscovered its humanity. David never sought the spotlight, but his impact was undeniable. Employees who once doubted him now sought his mentorship, and even those who resisted began to see that his leadership was reshaping not just the agency's success, but its culture. Angela remained his anchor throughout it all. She reminded him that his worth was never in the position he held, but in the man he chose to be. One evening, as they walked home together, she said softly, "You didn't just get a promotion. David, you taught them something they may never admit, that dignity can't be bought, and respect can't be denied forever." The transformation was not perfect. Richard and Claire eventually left the agency, their ambition unable to coexist with a culture they no longer controlled. Some might have celebrated their departure, but David did not. He felt no joy in their downfall, only a quiet relief that their shadows no longer lingered over the workplace. His victory was never about defeating them. It was about proving, to himself and to others, that worth is not dictated by status, wealth, or the cruelty of others. In time, his story spread beyond the agency. Younger professionals, especially those who had felt unseen or undervalued, found inspiration in his rise. They saw in David a reminder that patience and courage, when rooted in dignity, could break through even the hardest barriers. And though he never sought recognition, he became a symbol within the company of what true leadership looked like. Not arrogance cloaked in charm, but humility sharpened by wisdom. Years later, when people spoke of Brookstone Marketing's revival, they rarely mentioned the fancy office or the polished slogans. They spoke of a man who had once carried packages through its glass doors, who had endured humiliation with grace, and who had changed the course of the agency not by shouting the loudest, but by listening the deepest. They spoke of David, the man who showed that no insult could erase dignity, no mockery could silence truth, and no barrier could contain a spirit rooted in justice. And for David, that was enough. He never forgot the nights when he and Angela counted every dollar, the days when sneers cut deeper than words should. But those memories did not weigh him down. They lifted him. They reminded him of the journey, of the resilience it demanded, and of the victory that was never about titles or positions, but about standing tall in a world that had once tried to make him bow. His story became more than his own. It became a testament to every black man and woman who had been underestimated, dismissed, or ridiculed. It became proof that dignity, when held with patience and courage, could outlast the loudest cruelty. And though Richard and Claire had once laughed at him, history remembered their names only as shadows in the story of the man who rose above them.